It was very insightful that you shared key facts, which is, again, I'm going to re-emphasize them. Up to 94% of the business today is run by SMEs. And as you said, more than 60% of non-oil GDP is contributed by SMEs. And I'm going to add another point that SMEs employ up to 86% of the private workforce. So that's significant. There's a lot here. And the real question is, how do we help them to move from survival mode to true scale and global competitiveness? And today, I'm very honored to be sitting here with the expert to really shape the ecosystem. We have with us the government to really share with us the different government-driven initiatives and incentive and policies. At the same time, we have the Growth Fund from Emirates Growth Fund to tell us more about how are they supporting the SMEs. And lastly, but more important, is we have a true example of and a case study of the whole SMEs, and we have with us also a startup to share with us the true journey that they're going through to raise capital and to also ensure they have the right strategic partnership. And before I start, I would like just to ask you, as the audience, when you think of SMEs, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Is it startup, or is it the future companies that will shape the future of the UAE, be it on food security and in industry as a whole? And that's exactly the shift that we're here to explore. So starting with maybe Jana. Obviously, as I mentioned before, SMEs are the backbone of the economy, given the contribution to the employment, the economic diversification. From your perspective, what is the single biggest factor holding them back from reaching their full potential in the UAE?
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you for the question. That's right. SMEs are key for the economy of the UAE and every nation because they constitute 95% of companies. They constitute the large GDP contribution. Only in the UAE, since 2020, we had 160% increase of number of business licenses. And for the past 4 consecutive years, the UAE has been a #1 in the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor Index, creating a cohesive environment for enterprises. So, what's holding SMEs back? So, entrepreneurship, SME, it's a journey. It goes through stages, and every stage has certain requirements and certain opportunities, and SMEs need to be ready to embrace the right opportunities for that specific stage, and also to have access to them, which is part of the role of the government and the ecosystem, but also on their side to be ready to embrace them, whether it's with their business models, whether it's with the strategy, whether it's with their investment readiness. So it does go through the phase. And there is, the SMEs need to be ready for the specific phase to access those opportunities and to also be ready to avail them and embrace them.
Great. Thank you, Jana. Carlos, maybe from your perspective, what do you think is the single biggest factor that hindered them?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mira, and very good introduction and very interesting statistics. I think one statistic that was not mentioned was that SMEs account for 95% of total companies in the UAE, but they get less than 10% of bank financing in the UAE. So obviously there is a funding gap, and everybody speaks about this funding gap. And we know it's a big funding gap, but nobody exactly understands where exactly is this funding gap, right? Because if you look at the ecosystem in the UAE, there are many venture capital firms, especially in this region. It's pretty extensive and deep, I would say. There are more than probably $2 trillion of sovereign assets on the upper end of the scale. So sovereign wealth funds, private equity firms, either privately backed or sovereign backed. But there is nothing in the middle. And there are a number of companies out there that, guesstimates say that they may account for 70 or 80% of all the SMEs in the market, that they're bigger than, more mature than what venture capital would look at, but they're not big enough for private equity. And they are very good companies, profitable, cash generating, growing, maybe not as much as a venture capital investor would want to. And at the same time, because they haven't scaled yet, they're a bit risky for a private equity investor, so nobody's looking at them. And this is what EGF does. EGF covers this gap. EGF has the benefit of being a government-backed, sovereign-backed investor that applies flexible investment approach. And these SMEs are looking for this type of capital. And it's a basic part of the value chain. And we hope we can cover it. And we are our objective is to bring more investors, incentivize the private and government sector to support these SMEs because nobody's really focusing on them.
And we're going to get more in depth about how are you supporting and what are the criteria to do that. Rashid, from your perspective, what do you think is the single biggest factor holding you back from reaching your full potential in the UAE?
Okay, so what holds me back from my full potential, excuse my language, I'm going to be very transparent, but I believe that there's a big sales problem within the United Arab Emirates. I think that there's not enough support from federal institutions. There is some, but it's not enough. So it's very difficult for me to compete as a startup. So I'll give you an example. I'm in Union Co-op right now, and I'm on 10 shelves in the UAE. So 10 shelves, that cost me about 1,400 per store, so that's 14,000 a month. And that's not including the registration fees. If I get into Khalifa Fund, they support me, so 50% off. That's still 7,000 a month, plus the registration fees. So it brings me up to a total of maybe 50,000 to just get in. So it's the sales part that really holds the startup community back. None of us can get into supermarkets. No one can get into Spinneys. Nobody can get into these types of places. It's the truth.
Okay. Yeah, and this is why there are platforms like this to discuss in full transparency the challenges you face and to have the enablers to support you in addressing all your challenges. That's the essence of these platforms. Just going back to you, Karolos. So earlier in the morning, we heard from Her Excellency Najda Al Mitfa a little bit about Emirates Growth Fund, that is all about a growth equity platform, and that the true essence is really about not chasing unicorns or quick exits, as she said, but it's really about supporting the missing middle and to ensure we have the next generation of champions of the future of the UAE. Tell us a little bit more about what differentiates Emirates Growth Fund from the rest, and what type of growth capital and support models do you see emerging that would help SMEs like Rashid expand sustainably?
Yeah, I think that's very well said, Mira. I think these words are the main essence of what EGF does. Missing middle, patient, long-term, not chasing unicorns. And I think it links back to what I said earlier. The missing middle are all these SMEs that are just sitting in the middle and they don't tick the boxes for traditional investors, but they are healthy, they're important, and they're critical for the economy, right? Now, the reason investors are not looking at them is that they're healthy, but they may not return the money that investors are looking for within the next 3-4 years. They may need a longer-term type of capital, which cannot be boxed in a time horizon. So when you're a private equity fund or a venture capital fund and you are backed by LPs that are waiting for a strong return in the next 3 years, this doesn't work, right? So, and this is where EGF is really, really different. We are sovereign-backed, and we have a very low cost of capital. And this allows us to be much more flexible and patient in our approach. So the way EGF invests, we don't invest to maximize profit, we invest to maximize impact. And we have what Her Excellency also in the morning called a double bottom line. So of course we are an investor and we have to be sustainable and we have to make a profit. but we are also weighing as much, or if not more, the developmental impact. So if an SME that we're looking at is important for the economy, it creates value, it creates jobs, it develops a new sector or new verticals in the economy, we will weigh that in our approach, and we will be much more flexible on our return expectations to make this SME scale up, and why not become a national champion? So when we look at companies, we ask the question, does this company have the ingredient to become a national champion? And if it can make it in 3 years, great, but if we think that it has like a 7 or 8 year journey ahead of it, we will stay with them. And we will exit when the time comes and when we feel that they're sustainable to grow further, and obviously deliver value to the founders and to their stakeholders, and we work close to the founders. So this type of approach is a new, I would call it a new asset class, basically, which is called growth capital. It does not exist in the UAE, and it's not really widely spread globally. But at a time where traditional private equity and venture capital are facing challenges because of the nature of the capital markets and the rising cost of capital and so on, we are feeling a very big gap.
And you focus on specific food sector rather than specific trend or a buzz, I assume.
Absolutely. So, and thanks for that, I didn't mention it. We are not trend-driven, we are sector-driven. And we support the sectors of national priority, food being one of them, food security, and as well as manufacturing and healthcare and advanced tech linking to the sectors. And we invest in the sectors through the cycle. So we will not invest in the sectors when they look good and exit when things are not good. We will stay with this in these sectors because they're important for the economy, and it's our mandate. So we are a stable, reliable investor that is just main objective is to enable growth.
Great. This is great to know more about what's your mission and how you're supporting the ecosystem. Along with the Growth Fund capital, I want to go back to the governmental initiatives and shaping the ecosystem. So obviously, Jana, we're seeing several initiatives by the government to really strengthen the entrepreneurship ecosystem. And just 2 days ago, His Highness Sheikh Al Maktoum, he announced the launch of a national campaign to make the Emirates the global capital of entrepreneurship through I believe, the StartupEmirates.ae campaign, which is all about supporting entrepreneurs through different skill setting. And also, at the same time, as part of the food cluster, there is a work stream dedicated fully to supporting the SMEs. So obviously, as a government, you are a true catalyst to really implement the different policies and initiatives to create the right ecosystem. Tell us a little bit more about how are you supporting SMEs to access these new forms of finance and ensuring they can really scale up and compete both regionally but also globally.
Sure. So these are some of the recent policy initiatives that have been announced during the weekend. 2 days ago, His Highness announced the goal of strengthening the position of the UAE as a global hub for entrepreneurship innovation. And with that, there is a launch of different programs with different targets to support the establishment of new companies, their growth, development of the talent through different initiatives. In addition to that, just today, there was an announcement of the UAE Food Cluster, which is a great example of that stakeholder collaboration. It's based on the Michael Porter strategy, cluster strategy that was coined in the 90s. So it's a very verified model, triple helix model that brings together all the stakeholders, enterprises, funds, government, R&D, academia, media, to achieve the national competitiveness through helping SMEs to be competitive through different channels. So there are a lot of initiatives. Another initiatives that SMEs benefit from that is managed by the Ministry of Economy together with the Office of the Government Development and the Future, which I invite you to explore as a potential applicant, is the Future 100. So on annual basis, the UAE government publishes a list of leading SMEs in the UAE's future economy, including agri-tech, food tech, and sustainability. And we do this through a network of 38 ecosystem partners in the UAE, the corporates, universities, accelerators, VCs, and the companies not only receive the credibility by being on this list, but they received very robust support through directly the Ministry of Economy and Tourism and also through the partners. So for example, through the VCs that are partners of Future 100, the Future 100 enterprises receive more than $100 million of funding. 30% of them have scaled abroad. 70% of them participated in the ministry's international missions. So these are different type of initiatives that the ministry is doing together with other government entities as well as private partners.
And just, Jana, we also heard just now from the survey that the support mainly lead for SMEs is governmental incentives, so along with the initiative. What can you tell us also about some of the incentives for the startup?
Yes. So there is a great pool of government incentives in the UAE on the federal, on the local level. What we are doing is doing a so-called UAE OECD Policy Alignment Initiative, where we are looking into the policies in the UAE and how what we can learn from the OECD best practices and where we can do improvements. And this also includes access to funding and government incentives. And the learning has been clear. With the traditional current financing and funding products that we have, keep working on them, keep optimizing them, keep scaling them. When it comes to the focus, is policies or initiatives that include expansion of the government incentives, whether in terms of ease of doing business, whether in terms of ease of access of commercial loans, whether it's more access to grants, increasing credit guarantees, optimizing loan frameworks. So even when we talk about the collateral, having a look at how we can actually open up options for collateral, taking movable collateral as an option, for example, or IP as a collateral. And government procurement. So government procurement provides great benefits to SMEs, especially here in the UAE, because we have a 10% of target that public entities procure from the SMEs, and there is still a lot of upside to be embraced by SMEs. It's in millions of dirhams. So these are all, when we talk about incentives, we can talk about waiving of fees, which also exists. Now that we have the tax system, in the future, the tax system can be greatly utilized in providing incentives, government incentives through tax deductibles and similar, tax waivers and so on, which again is going to help us to unlock whether it's access to funding or unlock access to markets and so on. For example, in India, it's very common that there is a tax deductible that is provided to impact investors investing in impact enterprises. So when it comes to government incentives, there can be financial and as well non-financial.
Yeah. No, thank you for this overview, Jana, sharing the perspective of the different initiatives and policies, whether now or in the future, And this takes me to Rashid now. You've heard from both panelists, and obviously you have a startup. We would love first, I think it would be a good opportunity if you tell us a bit more about your business in the food security, but also walk us through the journey of the challenges you're facing, whether in terms of raising capital, but also to share with us what would you like to see a change in how investor and funds engage with startup like you, in full transparency.
Okay, so you want me to tell you about my business and how I would expect the market to change, the things that I'd like to see. Okay, so about my company, I am a healthy Emirati snack. I make date and camel milk bites out of date and camel milk, and it's got protein in it. So the way that I really started was I had no intention of coming out into the healthy snack industry. I started out as solving a problem, and that problem was that in the region we've got a lot of challenges, and one of these challenges is food security. So I sought to feed the entire country from within itself. So I went out to the desert and I started counting. What do we have in the desert to feed ourselves, like the entire country? The answer is dates and milk, and that answer is, is historically and presently. So the very problem was a dichotomy. So there's the problem of the formula, and then the way to deploy that formula. So I built my own machines, and if I build 2,000 of them, I can feed about 10 million people. So I was trying to solve a very large-scale problem, and I was deployed as a teacher in Africa by Georgetown University. And when I was there, I was sort of testing the product on the children there, and I found out very quickly that I am not a government. So the amount that I was giving, I mean, I was doing this in government numbers. But, what can you do? They're children, so, you feel for them. So I had to stop what I was doing because my company was dying. And that is why I had to pivot into the healthy snack industry. Now, one of the things that I'd like to see is that tenders need to be more transparent in a sense that I need to be able to, so if I had the government or the military, for example, in COVID, I actually can prove to you that with my machines and with my formulas, I can feed the entire country. I can support everyone, 2,000 machines. And if I had the ability to get LC or, I have to see a tender first. If there was some way where I could see tenders more clearly, that is, I would still be in the food security industry. So I would not have pivoted. So one of the things that I would like to see is large-scale tenders. And I'm not talking about Emirates Airlines or anything like that. I'm talking about military and real food security cases that are related to the MOFA. So MOFA does not have a physical account. There's foundations that work with it. And
so you're saying tenders do not give or favor the SMEs, and they have favor for more big established companies? Is that what you're saying?
So your question to me was, how would you see the food security industry? What changes would you like to see in the food security aspect? This is a food security aspect. So the initial concept of Rashtions was food security. So those contracts are sort of vague. So I wouldn't see something from the military that says, hey, we need something that could feed the entire country, for example, but from within. So the whole concept was that, instead of me buying from a food cluster or from India or something like that, and then sending so Sheikh Mohammed Zayed spent approximately $100 million in the last deployment to Lebanon. That was approximately 100,000 tons of food. Now, we cannot produce such amounts even if we had our wheat. Our entire wheat supply is 283,000 per year. If you expand to a certain extent without having dams or local resources, you're going to cause a water catastrophe. So we cannot scale at a speed that we want to. So that's why we're buying it from the outside. But dates and milk, the generation is already, it's already there. It's not like I'm reinventing the wheel. So instead of buying it from India, I could buy the dates from here. It's subsidized. The preservatives, I made it with Jamiat Al Imarat. I made it myself. So it's from the date. that is from here. So I don't have to pay for that either. I don't have to pay for the milk. So I don't have to pay the packaging either. Instead of spending $100 million to send to Lebanon, for example, for 100,000 tons of food, do we have 100,000 tons of dates? Yes. Do we have 100,000 tons of milk? Yes, we do. So why would I pay 100 million when I can pay 1 million? So it would change the dynamic of food security, and it would change the way charity is given. But the problem is that there are no tenders and there's no transparency on the needs of the country. So that causes, it's a red tape. It causes a problem.
Okay. Yeah. Very clear. And are there any more challenges as well for you in raising capital, other than what you just mentioned now in terms of like insufficient transparency?
In terms of capital, well, there were two routes for me to go. The first route was the traditional food security route. That has a lot of costs. So I need a clinical trial, that's $250,000. I need large-scale machinery, that's a couple $1 million. So in regards to that, there are no, unless you get somebody like Adia or something like that to really get onto you, there's no support for that type of funding. But for normal companies like me, of course, for a healthy food snack, there's a lot of support. So there's 3 million dirhams from Khalifa Fund. I find the easiest part of this country is that, the best part about this country is that I can go get an interest-free loan for 3 million dirhams. And there's, it's amazing as a resource, amazing for a company like me. But when it comes to the large-scale stuff, I find a little bit of difficulty.
Okay. Thank you, Rashid. We've touched upon the capital. Obviously, this is the key thing, and we also saw from the quick survey that this is the key ask from the startup. But also collaboration can be as valuable as capital. And strategic partnership can allow SMEs like yours to scale faster, innovate smarter, and tap into expertise that goes beyond just funding. So where do you see the best opportunities for partnership between SMEs and corporates, academia, or government? I can start with Karolos.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think it's obviously a very important question. I think we should look at it holistically as across the whole value chain. And there is a value chain that includes all the relevant stakeholders between government, large companies, academia, universities, incubators. And every piece of this value chain has to work for the next piece to work. So, and I mean, once you mention academia, obviously the link with incubators and the commercialization of R&D, which I think is happening in the UAE, but obviously there's opportunity to scale up, is extremely important. But for this to happen, incubators need to know that venture capital will be there to take the next round, and venture capital needs to know that growth capital will be there to cover the scale-up phase, and growth capital, well, needs to know that there is a capital market later on to be able to monetize their assets, but not necessarily in the capital market, potentially with large corporates through a trade sale. So they're all part of the value chain, right? And it all has to work, and it's obviously regulation and policy is very important to bring all of these things together. And I think all of us are aiming to fill a part of the gap, and I think everybody's doing a great job, but you need also a coordinating body to be able to cover the full spectrum. And obviously in the UAE, there are a number of very important initiatives that are addressing that, and there can be sector-focused initiatives or initiatives focused on certain parts of the value chain, but you need somebody to, let's say, grandfather the whole thing.
And ensure like a good integration between all of the stakeholders, all of the entities.
All the stakeholders, exactly.
Yes, yes.
Exactly.
And Jana, from your perspective, from a policy perspective, let's say, how do you see the opportunities for partnerships between SMEs and all of the ecosystem together?
Yes, the partnerships are critical. SMEs can greatly benefit from partnerships with different stakeholders. For example, with the ministries themselves, actually I don't think there is an initiative within the ministry that we wouldn't do in a partnership with another government or a private entity. Even the access to government procurement, we do in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance. Now we are developing a new fund, the RIADA fund, which we are also developing in collaboration and partnership with other ministries and entities. And for the SMEs, I'll use the example of Future 100. There are 38 partners in the Future 100 initiatives because to identify a list of top 100 future enterprises, it takes a village, it takes an ecosystem, hence that many partners. So, for example, one of our Future 100 companies has partnered with a corporation, Aldar, when they were commercializing. And this gave them a great opportunity not only to test and commercialize the project, but receive a project finance from them, and from there gain more customers and scale. Another partner that we have in Future 100 are VCs, Dubai Future District Fund, MEVP, Venture Souk, or ASEA Capital. So one of the Future 100 companies, the Circa Biotech, that is turning food waste into fertilizers and the sustainable aviation fuel, they started with grants. And then they received a loan. And then through Future 100, they now actually have received an investment from one of the VCs. Another partnership that we provide to the Future 100 companies, to the SMEs, is the partnership with Mohammed bin Zayed AI University. So through this partnership, the SMEs now have access to first hire the talent from the university. So they have a sort of a first access to the talent that is coming from the university. They have access to digital innovation and transformation infrastructure and capabilities through the framework and infrastructure and expertise that is within the university. For example, with another government department, the ministry itself, the many Emirati enterprises have access to the HealthyPath, the special national program incentives that provides a 90% discount on all the labor and visa fees through the Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratization. And it's all done through partnerships. And just the UAE food cluster that was announced today, it's the foundation of its partnership across all the stakeholders.
Absolutely, bringing like everyone together from food industry, academia, private sector, government. And I know tomorrow there's actually a working session on the SME. I believe it's run by you, Carlos, with the food cluster to really support all the SMEs in the UAE with the right knowledge. And I invite Rashid to be part of that workshop for more concrete actions and support. Also, I would love to hear from you, Rashid. How are you working in terms of collaboration and working with the different stakeholders as an SME? And do you feel there are opportunities from your end to strengthen better the partnership, whether with government, maybe academia?
Okay, so yes, there is a lot of support. I'm with Khalifa Fund, I'm with Sheikh Mohammed SME. As I told you previously, Khalifa Fund is where I prefer the loan structures. SME also has a loan structure. I believe it's periodically term loan, and then there's a balloon payment at the end. So, I mean, both of them have great funding opportunities. Both of them have their own programs. So I believe SME has something called the national program or something like that, and it gives you opportunities into large-scale companies. So large-scale tenders such as Emirates Airlines is one of them, I believe, and Khalifa Fund has Etihad. So these are great, but starting out, I couldn't provide for such a huge company, right? So where I look at mostly is as a real startup. So I'm a little bit down the line, but I'm speaking in the perspective of a much more newer startup. So if you start for the first year, you're going to struggle in terms of you're going to struggle in terms of sales and whatnot. So, the SME, Sheikh Mohammed's SME, I believe they sent me a marketing company. So they do have small assets like that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, it does. And good to know that you're already working with different, good to know that you're also working with the different stakeholders and being of different entities as well to support on that.
Could you define what different entities and different stakeholders are?
Sorry?
Could you give me an example of what a different stakeholder is?
So different stakeholders. I mean, there's also the academia. I know there's Khalifa University. There are so many different universities for collaboration, along with, the one that you mentioned, whether it's Khalifa Fund, but there's a lot of stakeholders, whether, again, it's government, but it's also be academia. I think also academia, especially when it comes to pilot testing, doing the right research, there's a lot of great universities and talent here to support and collaborate with the startup. And I know this is also a big opportunity and gap here. And there's also tomorrow we'll be also discussing how to ensure that academia is supporting a startup in their different initiatives.
Okay, so I'm actually a huge academic. I come from Georgetown University, Washington, D.C. And the only reason, so on my product, I've got a powder on it. This product was basically developed in Jana Elkova, and they helped me. So I took a look at their research, and I actually took what was in their papers and turned it into a reality. So first of all, you really have to be in academia to go where I went. There's a lot of red tape there. And this is not government red tape. This is the university itself. So I know a lot of people in Khalifa University that did something similar, but nobody did it like I did. But getting to academics is extremely difficult unless you meet them in an exhibition. So is there support from them? Not over the table. Not over the table. I only got to them because I know all of them. And if not for that, there's no way that a company like me could ever reach that. Nobody could ever get to the research that I did because I was friends with all these guys. I know the professors. Yes. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Rashid. Carlos, I just want to go back to, the Emirates Growth Fund. Obviously, your role is to unlock the growth capital for scaling SMEs. Where do you see the biggest financing gap today, and how is Emirates Growth Fund stepping into bridging those gaps to help SMEs transition from surviving to scaling?
Yeah, so I think obviously the gap is there in this missing middle that we just defined, but if you delayer it and go a bit deeper, you see different types of needs in different sectors, and I think this is what has driven also the focus of EGF in these particular sectors that we mentioned, because they are not only national priority sectors, but they're also underfunded sectors. And this is also reflected in a number of statistics. For example, they account for less than 10% of the UAE's GDP, right? So, and obviously we know that the UAE used to be driven by oil and gas, now it's being diversified, but still things like real estate, tourism, and all of this having a bigger share in the economy. And these type of sectors, food, healthcare, manufacturing, are, let's say, much more value adding to the economy than the others. So there is a funding gap in these sectors, and I want to speak about the food sector, particularly the food security sector. His Excellency in the morning spoke about a supply gap, right? And this supply gap is driven by a funding gap, right? Because the inherent nature of many food companies here in the UAE entail certain risks that to some extent deter investors, be it supply risk. Even if you are a local producer, you will have to import raw material, right? And dependence on imports internationally is a big risk that other investors don't want to take. And